All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series, where we're going through the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you want to check out behavioranalyticsstudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack and practice exams. As always, when you pass, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. You, a behavior analyst, receive a call one day from a potential client. Client says that they are good friends with Brenda, who is the mom of one of the kids that you currently work with. The potential client tells you that Brenda told them that you were able to fix any behavior problem within 6 months of starting. Potential client wants to start immediately. How should you handle this situation? All right, immediately we should identify this as an ethics question. We have a situation, what the question is asking about, where you receive a call from a client who says they're friends with a potential client who's friends with Brenda, the mom of one of the kids that you currently work with. So let's start there. Would that be dual relationship to take on the friend of a client you work with? Well, not necessarily, because as long as you're professionally involved with Brenda and have no personal connection, and you have no personal connection to her friend, then there's still no dual relationship going on. Everything is still strictly professional. So far, so good. Now, the potential client tells you that Brenda told them that you were able to fix any behavior problem within 6 months of starting. What's the issue there? Well, number one, we never guarantee timeframes. We can't. It's impossible to guarantee that you can fix anything within a certain amount of time. It's really impossible to guarantee that we can fix something, period. Sometimes we might not be a good fit. Sometimes we might have to refer out. We can't make guarantees. So the fact that your client or Brenda is telling the potential client that you're able to fix behavior problems within 6 months is a problem. Now, is that your problem? Well, if we think about our ethical code, there's a specific code that says BCBAs and behavior analysts are responsible for public statements made about them, even if they're not the ones making it. So just the fact that Brenda is making this statement about you is an issue that you need to address. So how should you handle this situation? A, take on the client if you'd like, and thank Brenda for the referral. Now, you can take on the client, but there's other steps you need to take. You have to address the fact that Brenda is making these public statements about you. There's an entire ethical section about public statements. This situation falls under that section. So B, take on the client if you'd like and ask Brenda politely to not describe your services that way anymore. B is a great way to address it. If you want to take the client, you can. It's still strictly professional, but you need to politely tell Brenda or explain to Brenda that she can't claim that you can fix problems within 6 months, because if you take on the client, that might be their expectations, and there's no way to live up to those expectations. It's just not a true public statement. You have to address it. B looks pretty good. We always read all of our answer choices. C, refuse the client to avoid a dual relationship and ask Brenda to stop referring you to potential clients. Well, C is too strong. You don't have to refuse the client to avoid a dual relationship because there's no personal relationship going on. It's all professional. And Brenda is able to refer you to potential clients. You're not soliciting testimonials or anything. She's just sending clients your way. Everything is fine except for the fact that she's telling clients that you can fix things within 6 months. And then D, refuse the client, but there is no need to talk to Brenda. That's just not true. So B is our best answer. Take on the client if you'd like and ask Brenda to politely to not describe your services that way anymore. Now, we've taken, a decent amount of time on this question. I would say ethical questions and supervision questions are questions that are likely going to take the most of your time because they're much more abstract and they take more analytic thought, I would say, because it's not just applying principles of behavior to situations. You've got to examine the whole situation from an ethical standpoint, and if it's a supervision standpoint, from a supervision standpoint. So the fact that we spent time on this question is okay because we got it right. And that's the number one thing. Doesn't matter how long it takes, you have to get that question right. If you take 2 minutes on a question and get it wrong, way worse than taking 2.5 minutes and getting it right. It is the holiday season and the busiest time of the year for Dave, who is a salesman. Dave's boss tells him that if he sells 10 units next week, he will receive a small bonus. The boss then ups that to 20 units the following week. What is the boss using? Now, this is a great example of why it's okay to take more time on the harder, longer questions. Because a question like this should be, once you're ready to take the test, it should be extremely easy for you. And you should answer it very quickly. And this is how you make up time you spent getting the other question right. Now, this is a differential reinforcement question, and it's pretty straightforward, right? We have Dave, who's a salesman. Dave's boss tells him, you have to sell 10 units next week. You will get a small bonus. The boss then says, now we want 20 units to get that bonus. So what is Dave's boss doing? Well, he's slowly increasing the criterion for Dave to get reinforcement. He's trying to increase Dave's selling of units. What is the boss using? A, differential reinforcement of other behaviors. Well, with other behaviors, we're reinforcing in the absence of a behavior, and that's not happening here. Dave must sell a certain amount of units to get reinforced. DRO is out. If you look at B and C, DRD and DRL, those are both looking to reduce behavior, diminishing and lower rates. We're not looking to reduce Dave's behavior. The boss wants to increase. So he's looking at higher rates, right? He wants more units per week. So the boss is using DRH. Differential reinforcement questions, by the time you get ready to test, should be a piece of cake. And that's going to give you the luxury of spending time on the harder questions, because this question should be answered very, very rapidly once you're ready to sit for your exam. The number 10, a $10 bill, and 5 plus 5 are an example of what? All right, short question doesn't make it easy, right? We still have to break it down and think about this. So we have the number 10, a $10 bill, and 5 plus 5. So immediately we have 3 stimuli. Now, all these stimuli are related how? Well, they all evoke you saying 10, right? If you see the number 10, it's 10. $10 bill is 10. 5 plus 5 is 10. So immediately I think, well, this is a functional stimulus class. However, that is not an option. Now we've got to move on to our next prediction. Well, let's say we don't have another prediction. Only at that point, once we've understood the question, made a prediction, should we go to the answer choices. So A, stimulus equivalence. Well, with stimulus equivalence, we're talking matching to sample. We're talking derived relations. We're talking transitivity, symmetry, reflexivity. Just because all these possibly could have symmetry and reflexivity doesn't mean they do. There's no indication of stimulus equivalence in the information. So A is not the right answer. What about B, stimulus salience? Well, salience has to do with the magnitude or presence of the stimulus in relation to the learner or the person, the magnitude in relation to whatever the reference point is. We're not talking about salience because we don't know the salience of the stimulus. So what about an arbitrary stimulus class? Well, sure. The number 10 doesn't really have anything in common with a cash $10 bill and doesn't really have anything in common with 5 plus 5. They look different. The form is different. So they're not really formally similar. So they're arbitrary, but they're still part of a stimulus class evoking the same behavior. So all 3 are still an example of an arbitrary stimulus class. So the number 10, a $10 bill, and 5 plus 5 are an example of arbitrary stimulus class. Which of the following scenarios does not represent contingent observation? Be careful here. Contingent observation is what kind of procedure? Contingent observation is a timeout punishment procedure. That's very important here, right? It's not just, well, I'm observing. It's a part of a punishment timeout procedure. We have to look at something that's similar to that. A, Tammy throws her vegetables on the ground, so her mom has her sit at the table without dessert while her siblings eat ice cream at the table. Is this contingent observation? Well, sure. Tammy has to sit at the table and observe her siblings eat ice cream because she threw her vegetables on the ground. So this is contingent observation. Remember, we're looking for the scenario that does not represent contingent observation. B, Gregory starts to scream after he lost a match on Xbox, so his dad gives the controller to his brother and tells Gregory he can only watch now. Same thing. Gregory now has to observe his brother play, contingent on screaming after he lost the match. So what about C? Martha informs her technician that she will be at the client's house on Tuesday to supervise session and provide feedback. Is anyone being told to observe based on their behavior? No. Martha's just letting her technician know she'll be out to session to give feedback. This is not contingent observation. This is just simply supervision. Contingent observation is a specific intervention. It's a specific response to a behavior where the learner now has to contingently observe the setting based on their previous behavior. Jason's wife tells him every morning to put a lid on his coffee cup before he gets into his car. Jason's wife is out of town today, so Jason gets into the car with no lid on his cup and coffee spills everywhere. Now, Jason never gets into his car without a lid on his cup. Why? What is stopping Jason from getting into his car without a lid on his cup? Let's ask ourselves first, right? Because we have a consequence question. Is the behavior increasing or decreasing? Well, typically, Jason gets into the car with no lid. Now, Jason never gets into the car without a lid. So what happened? Well, getting into the car without a lid has decreased. Okay. And so since the behavior decreased, it's got to be extinction or punishment. Since punishment is the only option, it must be punishment. It's not reinforcing because Jason's behavior did it increase, it decreased. So we have to ask ourselves, is it positive or negative? Was something added or taken away? Well, the fact that Jason got into the car with no lid and then coffee spilled everywhere as a consequence, that was added to the environment, it was positive. So Jason, never getting into the car without a lid on his cup, was punished by a spill, which was added, making this be positive punishment. Consequence questions, very straightforward. Ask yourself, did the behavior increase or decrease? And then was something added or something taken away? Combine those two, you get your consequence. Jane, a behavior analyst, is no longer able to support a supervisee. It is taking up too much of her time and she can't provide adequate supervision. Jane informs the supervisee of the situation. What must Jane do now? What is Jane's responsibility in this scenario, if anything? She's an analyst. She can't support her supervisee. It happens. It takes up too much of her time and she can't provide supervision. She's doing the ethical thing by terminating supervision. If you can't provide the time and resources needed to supervise, you shouldn't. So she tells the supervisee of the situation. Is there anything else Jane must do? A, report the termination of supervision to the board. No, that's not necessary. If she's only supervising her in the RBT capacity, she needs to remove her from her profile. If it is BCBA hour supervision, then Jane can sign off on the current hours and be done with it. But she doesn't have to report this to the board specifically. B, attempt to help the supervisee find another supervisor. This is part of Jane's responsibility. You've got to facilitate continuity of supervision. Just like if you can no longer support a client, you can't just abandon them. You've got to help them find another supervisor or company or whatever it may be. Now, obviously, it might not be possible, but Jane has to give an effort to help that supervisee find another supervisor. C, Jane cannot terminate supervision if a contract was signed. Not necessarily. Jane is responsible for the hours that she did do with the supervisee. She has to give the supervisee those hours, but things happen. She is able to get out of this contract, but she has to do it ethically. And indeed, nothing Jane has done everything necessary. No, not quite yet. She has to attempt to find continuity for the supervisee. She can't just abandon the supervisee and leave them hanging out to dry. Which of the following answer choices is not considered an element of baseline logic? All right, so we're looking at baseline logic as far as experimental design goes, and the answer choice that is not considered an element, meaning 3 of these will be baseline logic. A, prediction. Is prediction part of baseline logic? It is, right? We are predicting what would happen if we never, what would happen with baseline if we didn't intervene. We would predict the baseline will continue as is, for example. What about B, verification? Well, verification is, let's say, in a reversal design, when we withdraw the intervention, we verify our prediction of baseline. What about description? Now, don't get this confused with goals of science in ABA. Prediction, description, and control are goals of science. Baseline logic includes prediction, verification, and replication. Replication, we want to replicate our intervention to show that we can do it again. So, which of the following answer choices is not considered an element of baseline logic? Well, that's going to be C, description. Thank you for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Our exams are now available digitally, so look forward to that. Please subscribe and spread the word if we've helped you in any way. We really appreciate it. As always, let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.